Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie McLeod-Skinner, and I'm running for Secretary of State to protect our democracy, make more accountable government, and safeguard our environment. We've been doing these live streams, having two-way conversations with Oregonians, talking about the role of Secretary of State, listening to voices that need to be heard across our state, and highlighting some really great candidates. And today I'm delighted to be joined by two fellow, maybe I should say sister Central Oregonians, Emerson Levy, who's a candidate for House District 53, and Kim Schmith, who's a candidate for Jefferson County Commissioner. That's my county. Em and Kim, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're going to start with our bios, just to give folks a little bit of background on us all, and then talk about some of the issues in your respective races, some of the issues here in Central Oregon, and then we'll get to answering questions. And so folks listening in have any questions, please type them in the comment section and we'll get to them a little bit later. So just kicking this off, let me see. I was born in Wisconsin. My mom took a teaching job in Tanzania when I was a kid. And then when we returned to the States, I finished up high school in Southern Oregon. I'm an Ashland High graduate. After getting degrees in engineering and planning, I began my public service over in Bosnia and Kosovo. I'd come out as a young adult, and so military service was not an option then. But I worked repairing schools and hospitals. And then when I wanted to come back to the States, the IRC asked me to run their refugee resettlement office in San Jose, where I worked with helping people rebuild their lives, helping people also become citizens and access their right to vote. I served on the Santa Clara City Council for 8 years, including on the audit committee and several other committees, then worked also for local government in organizational effectiveness for an award-winning city as a city planner, as an environmental planner. When I came home to Oregon, got a law degree focused on natural resource law, water law, and Indian law, clerked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers down in Klamath on the water case, and also worked as a city manager in Southern Oregon before running for Congress in 2018. My wife and I live in Central Oregon. I'm a natural resource attorney and also serve on the Jefferson County Education Service District Board, and also was appointed by the governor to serve on OWEB, the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. So that's me. Em, let's kick it over to you.
I don't want to have to follow that, Jamie. Goodness.
Stop.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Emerson Levy, and I'm running for House District 53. And so that's a pretty big district that includes Redmond, parts of Bend, so Northeast Bend, and then all the way over a lot of Aubrey Butte, all the way to the base of Northwest Crossing, and then Sun River as well. So it's a pretty big district, a pretty diverse district. My background, I'm an attorney as well. My background is mostly in finance and asset-based financing within the green energy field. So I think in a way it's a good career to lead into these COVID times of being very familiar with financing and loans and all the nitty-gritty that it takes to get businesses up and running. And then I am a mom to a 5-year-old little one who is usually trying to pop up in these videos, but it's late at night, so we're good to go today. And, you know, most of my desire to run really came from my experience of having to go back to work very early. I went back to work at 9 weeks, and just my experiences with my daughter that has extreme asthma, and those situations really compelled my run.
Wonderful, thank you. Kim, please give us a bit of your background as well.
I grew up in Madras. I feel really blessed about that. I went through all of my education in Oregon, including I went to school in Metolius and then in Madras. I got my bachelor's degrees from Oregon State University, and then my master's is from the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine. And so in 1999, when I moved back to Madras after living in Asia for 4 years, I came back, opened my business, and that was just exciting to me. But also being a woman, opening a business in 99 with a business that looked a little different was not great. Like when I wanted to get my business loan, I was told, yeah, can your dad get that for you? Things like that. And I would like to see that be different. And it has changed a lot. That was 20 plus years ago. So it has changed a lot, but that's a lot of what drives me. In the meantime, I've worked with places like J Youth Services, which is all of Central Oregon, provides services, but I represented Jefferson County for 8 years when I worked on their operations board. So that's where I first learned about contracts, dealing with 200 employees and multi-million-dollar just budgets and multiple programs. So
Wow, and JBarJ is such a great organization. Those of you who are not
Fantastic.
familiar with it, look it up at some point. Yeah, our family's a big fan as well. It's just such a delight to be speaking with both of you, such great public servants and all the work you've done throughout our community and here in Southern Oregon as well. And just in terms of our connection to each other, Kim, I think we met back in 2017.
Yes.
When I was running for the second congressional district, and I remember you were actually volunteering for another candidate, and I remember thinking, wow, this woman should be running because she's remarkable. And then not only I think we're Emerge sisters,
Yes,
but also
we
met at for those of you who don't know, Emerge Oregon is a great organization, helps to provide training to women on running for office, providing that background. And Kim, you could probably teach some of those things with your experiences also. And Em and I also, most recently pre-COVID-19, when we were still meeting in groups, there was a neighborhood leader event we met at in Deschutes County, I believe. And then also, someone told me recently, so this is a kind of an extended thank you from all of us. It's my understanding your spouse works in a hospital. So
he does, but he is their attorney, so he can't take credit for the frontline work. But
okay, there we go.
A lot of the people, I think we're really grateful for everyone working at St. Charles and all the teams that got all the supplies and all the contracts that get the supplies. There's just been a lot going on behind the scenes that is really amazing, and I think we're all very grateful.
Yeah, and especially in this time, everyone, frontline staff, doctors, nurses, janitors, folks bring us, food service providers, folks who are picking the food in the fields, just some really remarkable work that's being done. So we express our appreciation for all of that. So let's kick it off with talking a little bit about the area where we live. So we all probably live within an hour of each other, about an hour probably, but within an hour of each other. Central Oregon's pretty big, and it's pretty different in the different areas where we are. What are some of the issues, or what are some of the things you don't think people necessarily understand or get about Central Oregon? Kim, why don't we start with you?
We were, we're a couple of minutes before we started, Em and I were talking about internet service. And in Jefferson County, internet service is huge. And so when you live in a city, you take internet for granted. You actually take for granted that you can hotspot your phone if you do have a weird internet thing, where in many parts of rural Jefferson County, there is no internet. Their jaws just dropped when I explained that in Ashwood, they have dial-up, which means you can't even open most websites today. Many parts of the Warm Springs Indian Reservation, it's very, very similar. If you're on the core and you're in the core of Warm Springs, yes, you're gonna be able to get internet. But if you live outside of that main corridor, you're gonna really struggle. And right now, when we take a look at doing online schooling and education, it's a serious hardship. So people are very concerned, how do we make this happen? So that's just, it literally, people just cannot fathom not having internet.
That distance learning challenge we're facing right now, and Kim, you and I both are involved with the school. I'm on the ESD, but I know you also work and you volunteer and you do a lot of work with the school, the high school especially. Yeah, this is a huge issue we're seeing in Jefferson County. And then for those who don't know, Ashwood, the school she mentioned, has got, that's within the ESD, has got 5 kids. So 5 kids. We sometimes have larger schools and smaller schools in rural areas. But yeah, so dial-up doesn't allow a lot of opportunities in terms of some of the higher demand of some of the programs and some of the equipment. And what are some of the things that come to mind for you for what's unique about, or what do you think people don't really understand or know about Central Oregon?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate Kim just really highlighting that issue. I told her that I texted a few friends because I wanted to see how widespread that issue was known of dial-up in parts of Central Oregon. And no one knew and no one believed me. So I think that we need to, raise voices. I mean, when we are failing one part of the community, we're failing all Oregonians, and we need to be held accountable to get services where they're needed. I think a big misconception about Central Oregon is that it is completely red. It is there's a diverse thought, which I think makes us stronger. It makes us more pragmatic. But we are about a third Democrats. We actually have a lead by a few votes, a third Republican, and then a third non-affiliated voters. and with a growth, I think, of about 6,000 Dems in the last few years. So it is purple, and it is trending blue. And District 53, where I'm at, looks different than District 54, which is all of Bend. So it's different, it's diverse, and I think that's a big misconception.
Yeah, I found that so often in 2018, and in conversations I've had with folks in urban areas who just say, oh, you're from, from the dry side of the state, or you're from east of the Cascades, it's all red. And yeah, most of our representatives have been Republican and some of them more conservative, but it's not been by a lot. And like Deschutes County, where you're talking about, we actually won that county back in 2018. It hadn't happened in almost 50 years for a Democratic congressional candidate, but we saw that happen because of that connecting with people on a pragmatic level. The other thing I've found a lot is sometimes even just language. So talking about ideas, talking about things that we can all kind of agree and care about with our community. And it doesn't, the thing that really struck me is how often they were what I would call really progressive ideas, but it's just sometimes, again, using different language, or people just saying, yeah, that makes sense, talking about it in a common sense way, and that kind of using that pragmatic approach. Because it's such a misnomer. It's such a misnomer, I think, about Central Oregon. But and also you're more in Deschutes County. Kim and I are in Jefferson County, so it's a little bit different politically in terms of the breakdown. But it's true. I still think. I mean, Kim, what would you say especially about Madras? I mean, I think that diversity of thought is a good way to frame it.
Well, we have diversity of people, first of all. We have one of the most diverse counties in the state of Oregon. And so when you take a look at that changes things. So you take again a look at the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. They're considered about 75–80% Democrat. And so, and the city of Madras is going to be a little bit more conservative. Your outer lying, your Ashwoods, your Culver, your Round Butte areas. Crooked River Ranch is an interesting mix, as you know, out there.
Real interesting mix, yeah.
And then, but our breakdown is very different. So we are about, our non-affiliated is about 150, so 50% more than the Republicans. And the Democrats are about a third short of the Republicans. But statistically, the non-affiliated are more and more voting issue, not party. And they're more and more voting, like you said, what are the commonality areas of concern? And so it's changing how we're starting to come out on things. The Republicans definitely are still stronger. They have a much stronger presence, but it's very interesting. You have many groups, like I was talking with somebody on the reservation yesterday, and she flat out said, if we all voted, we could own every election. And I'm like, you could. Yep. And so, and I think each community within Jefferson County actually could do that. So,
yeah, that's really huge. And you also talked about that, the diversity in terms of demographics. So when I talk about Madras High School, which is the largest school in our, in the ESD, in the Education Service District where I serve, it's about a third tribal kids, a third Latinx kids, and a third Caucasian kids. And a lot of folks, again, I think are really surprised by that diversity in Jefferson County here in Central Oregon. The other key point about voter turnout. So this is one of the things that I really want to focus on as Secretary of State is, yes, increase overall voter turnout, but also decrease those discrepancies. And there's actually legislation in the U.S. House of Representatives that was introduced, hasn't really gone anywhere beyond the House at this point, but it's a program to really focus on overcoming the barriers for tribal communities nationwide. Even if they're not able to pass that, I would love to do something specific here in Oregon as Secretary of State to really focus on partnerships with our 9 federally recognized tribes to make sure we can help with voter turnout, because it's always this thing, when our voices are heard, people are more responsive, our elected officials are more responsive, and that's a huge thing. Actually, one other thing I want to say, Kim, sorry, just about your race, and I'm going to mention at the end as well, or you can beat me to it, is that you're running in a nonpartisan race. And so what does that mean for this primary for you?
So nonpartisan race is, many of the county commission races in Eastern Oregon are nonpartisan now. I don't think Bend is, Deschutes County, and I think Jackson County is not. And so, but when it's nonpartisan, that means that whoever wins if somebody wins 50% at the primary, it's theirs. If
They're in, it's done. Yeah.
they're in and it's done, and cross our fingers there, work hard for that one. If in my case right now, there's 3 candidates. And so it makes it a lot harder to get 50%. So if nobody gets 50%, then it becomes a true primary. And then the top 2 go to the general. I will say though, that the other 2 candidates made the decision to not put their information in the Oregon voters pamphlet. And I think that's going to hurt them tremendously.
So let's tie back into that right at the end when we're signing off, so you can give your contact information. Oh, obviously both of you can, so people can reach out, but this next couple of weeks are going to be especially important in your race. Let's jump over to what are some of the important issues in your district or statewide that you think we need to address, and either in general, or you can talk about specifically in relation to COVID-19 and looking forward post COVID-19. And why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. An issue that I've made clear from the beginning that I really care about is education and childcare, specifically that childcare for kids 0 to 3. We only have 1 out of 5 available spots, and this was pre-COVID for kids who are 0 to 3, right? Because it's a higher insurance cost. Kids have to be, they aren't potty trained at that age, and so it's more expensive for the provider to have this is a facility for kids under 3. So only 20% have a placement. And then now with COVID, we know that we're in danger of losing facilities, because even the ones that are opened as emergency facilities, they are operating at a loss. So we already have businesses at a tight margin. And so we are looking at an even bigger problem when this is all over. And we have a childcare accelerator and we have a lot of great things, but we need someone in the legislature to really champion this in a more pragmatic, more accessible way. So that's a big issue, and we'll really have to face it. We don't know what the loss is going to look like until the dust settles again, and we're going to rebuild our businesses. I think jobs are going to be really in the forefront, and how we get people back to work, and how we get money in people's pockets, to be frank.
Yeah, rebuilding our economy, and also with small business is so key. And this is actually where the Secretary of State jumps in as well, because it's helping to register businesses. I've been talking to a bunch of folks and trying to figure out how the Secretary of State's office can be a more lean in and be a more active partner with some of the other organizations statewide, some that the governor oversees, but trying to make sure that we're able to protect and strengthen and then rebuild our small businesses. Here in Oregon, about 9 out of 10 of our businesses are small businesses, or have less than, I think it's less than 20 or 30 people. So smaller businesses, they make up employ about over half of our workforce. So it's a critical part of our sector. Kim, well, both you and I, but you're a small business owner yourself. Thoughts on this?
And of course I'm closed because I do healthcare. So I'm not able to provide healthcare. In fact, I would like to share that I made a doctor's appointment today, and when I called them up, my doctor is furloughed. And so with rural clinics, if we lose those doctors, and it literally could be that they can't hold on and they go someplace else because they can't afford to wait those 3 to 6 months. They've got their family and they have to move forward. And that I just caught my breath. That's really scary to me. We work really hard to get doctors and healthcare workers in rural Oregon. And so that's a huge concern. So similar, the small business, how do we strengthen our economy after COVID-19? How do we bring money in? When we take a look at infrastructure, everyone's talking about infrastructure and roads. Obviously, I would like to tag along, in addition to that, infrastructure for internet services. That'd be fantastic. But the other thing for me that I take a look at is one of our big issues is the whole, it's the transparency. And so right now, people don't even know who to ask for about information on COVID. And so it's like, if you don't know who to go to in your county, it makes it really difficult. And because you're not gonna be able to go to a Portland, you can't even go to KTVZ and get very much information on Jefferson County. So you really have to be able to trust your local community. Our health department, our public health is fantastic. So that's great, but where can we go and get some of that information? So transparency right now is an issue for my county. Like an example would be, the county commission did not have any board minutes or packets. This was last week, April 22nd. They did not have anything past February 5th. It was 12 meetings, including all of their emergency COVID-19 meetings. And so people are like, well, where's the information? Is anything coming to us? What are we supposed to do? So that's just really important to me, is to change that, to make it transparent. People know they can go to us because they need to know we're working for them. And so the other issue for us is housing. You know, those people in Central Oregon, it's a huge issue, and people that might have been eligible for loans, maybe they can't get those loans now. And so we've got to continue to build housing in Jefferson County. We need some density. I would love to see some senior condominiums or something with shared land. That's what people talk about all the time, is can you get us a couple square blocks? We can all have condominiums and share our yard work. I'm like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, housing, it's like the top one or two issues in every single county in the state. It's amazing how, and you know, in the metro area, people are talking about the houseless issue and homelessness and folks who are struggling with housing. And I always say it's the same in rural communities as well. It's really throughout the state. This is actually ties in to your role, is when legislation does get passed in Salem. And there was a housing legislation that went through about a year ago, and it was great legislation for the metro area. So kudos to the folks who carried it. Good job. They helped to address some of the issues in the metro area, but it did not help, and it was not designed, and it wasn't it wasn't ill will, but it was not having folks at the table who could really talk about the different needs in rural communities. And so having that perspective, being able to bring that perspective in, is really key. A council member from Hermiston, a friend of mine, was talking about his frustration during that time, because he was saying that the legislation just wasn't hearing the issues in Eastern Oregon. And so having that, and the Bend area is different from Madras, but still having that background, that experience, is really key. And then Kim, I really appreciate your comments about transparency. I mean, we've talked about this for years, last several years. I know it's a big issue for both of us, and I really appreciate your focus on bringing, at the county level, bringing that information forward. That's near and dear to my heart as well. And again, something that the Secretary of State is responsible for, not just through the archives, through making sure that information is available to all Oregonians, but also through the audit process. And when those audits are complete, making sure people know how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. It's really important for building public trust, like you're saying, but also, you know, we have a right to that information. It's our government, and that's how democracy is supposed to work. And then just lastly, also really appreciate the comments about infrastructure, because we talk about the highway system. Everyone thinks, okay, yeah, that's part of our public system, part of our public dollars, but we're in the information age, and making sure we all have access to that information highway is really key. Let me see, I touched on some of those issues. So how do we do this? And the thing that people always ask me is, how do we bridge the urban-rural divide? I mean, what do you guys think? What are some of your ideas? What's your advice? What would you say to folks, either advice to folks locally and regionally, or advice to our friends over in more urban areas?
Well, I would say that, for just pragmatically speaking, it is beneficial for Central Oregonians to have legislators or senators in the party that is in charge. It literally gives us a seat at the table, because the opposite is we have the walkout. And so that we have that opportunity to sit at the table and maybe even have hard conversations with our own party about the needs of Central Oregonians and further out communities. I would say the density issue is the same thing that we talk about here in Bend and Redmond. You know, the further we go out, the city has to pay for those roads. So how can we be efficient? How can we talk about how our zoning is different in a way that makes sense for Central Oregon and makes sense for the metro area? But how can we bring our issues? And I think we have to be at the table. And right now we are not at the table.
Yeah, well, and in the land use piece, I was speaking with some of our colleagues who are also running, others running in Central Oregon, and land use kept coming up time and time again. And that concept of working together and shared use and understanding of, there can sometimes be overlapping uses that are complementary, that don't conflict. It's not either or. Kim, thoughts
on land use all day? I love it.
I know.
One of the things I like to do is ask them, how would they solve the problem? And then I give them a couple. So an example would be, you're talking with somebody from the Valley, and I'll say, okay, so how would you solve the problem of setting up some additional housing in your community? and you got $500,000. You know, it's just like, and so it's like, if you have how many miles and miles of road, and what 10% would you choose to be graveled instead of paved with the current budget, you know? So ask them to make some of the hard choices, because I don't think they understand that when they get 10% of something, they think, well, that's a lot of money I can do something with. Well, 10% for us is not the same amount. And so have them solve some of the problems. And they quickly, one of my favorite ones is I say, well, what do you consider rural? What size of a town in your area is rural? And usually they'll give you something that's like 30,000. And I say, okay, there's no, my county is 24,000. And so I think it makes them think a little bit differently, because really they've never been to rural. They really don't understand. They go through rural. They've never usually lived in rural. And so you just have to ask them to solve problems, put on a rural hat. And then all of a sudden they realize, okay, this is a little more complicated than I thought. So.
Well, it's so funny we were talking about the sizes. I remember getting this question a couple of years ago. It's like, well, if you get elected, will you show up in small communities like Pendleton and Klamath and Burns? And I said, those are big cities to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Those are big towns. But it's like, it's all that perspective. The other thing I think on the urban-rural divide is really key, I found, is often just language. So this thing about buzzwords, and I know in certain areas you can use certain, like the classic I always go to is talking about climate change. So in urban areas, you talk about climate change, it's like, yeah, we all know what we're talking about. We're trying to protect the long-term sustainability of our planet, and our economy and our air and our water and all that stuff. And in rural areas, you know, I typically talk about drought and flooding and wildfire, because those are some of the ramifications of our changing climate. But it just is that more, it's not buzzword language that people kind of knee-jerk response to one way or the other. It's jumping into that pragmatic thing of like, look, if you want to be able to turn your farm over to future generations, and especially if you've inherited from your family, you're not going to be able to do that with the changes we're seeing. And farmers, you know, talk to me about that. So it's not, you know, everyone knows it. So how do we engage people in that problem solving, I think, is really key. And to that point, and you mentioned this before, I think it's so important that the importance of having rural Democrats at the table, because there's a perspective and also relationships that are in place. I mean, you know, our neighbors, I borrowed some equipment from my neighbor today, and he's not a Democrat, and he's just, you know, we chatted over the fence, and if he needs something, you know, we'll give it to him. We're happy to help him, and if we need something, he's always happy to help. And so those type of relationships that don't always need to go to the place of politics, but are relationship based, I think also shapes how we engage around things. Let's jump. We get actually a bunch of questions came in. So the first one is, how do you think COVID-19 will affect rural healthcare?
I mean, Kim could probably speak better to this, but one thing that I think I really want to continue to call out, especially when some of our leadership locally kind of backs our president in the immigration thing, in banning immigration. June is coming, and that is when we get a lot of new doctors, and a lot of these new doctors come to rural communities, and we need to, these are assets and wonderful, wonderful humans that come to our country, and a lot of them go to communities like ours. And so I think we need to have a more global understanding of what that really means and how that can actually affect rural medicine. So I think that's an issue that we need to talk about more. But I know Kim can speak to this more than I can.
That's such a great, I haven't heard that specific. I mean, I've heard before about talking about healthcare, and you mentioned before about doctors potentially leaving areas. I know it's a big issue down in Klamath Falls area. They've got a big hospital, and doctors are staying on, taking much lower salary because they're committing to living in rural areas and working in rural areas and struggling with housing and schools for their kids and all that other stuff. But this actually specific component of folks coming in to our communities, great point. Thank you. Kim, rural healthcare.
So many of our young doctors and other healthcare practitioners, they come here in part to alleviate their medical debt, because they're able to get rid of their educational debt. Many of them go through the Indian Health Services. People aren't aware that in Jefferson County, we have a very strong Indian Health Service program, as well as when you're off the reservation, there's the Madras. There's several other clinics and a St. Charles Madras Hospital. And so again, I speak to the fact that we might actually be losing healthcare practitioners with COVID-19. And it is so hard to get them here. We're finding it's harder and harder to get doctors. We're still able to get PAs, still able to get nurses, but harder and harder to get doctors to practice here. And part of that is they want a stronger educational system. So I'm adamant that we need to have a strong educational system, because people want to live and play where their children can get the best education.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's such a huge, so the housing aspect, education for kids is really key to developing healthy and strong communities. And then also, you mentioned this is true for any counties or parts of the state where there are federally recognized tribes, is also that government to government relationship. So there's both some seamless activities in terms of services, but there's also that added layer of having that understanding and that complexity that's brought to local government and in Jefferson County especially. Let me see. Liz asked, what can people who live east of the Cascades do to convince people in the valley that our concerns are different and that our issues matter too? Okay, the $100,000 question. Who wants to take that?
I think it goes back to what you said about relationship building. We need to be in the business of building a bridge that has two sides. Well, all bridges have two sides, but that we can meet and have discussions and to be able to convey what's important to Central Oregonians and why, and then in a compassionate and an effective way that isn't a way that just shuts down relationships. So I think just kind of how we communicate with people here in Central Oregon is that meet people where they're at and treat people with the respect that they deserve. And I think we can get really far from there.
That's just so true, Em. I would argue that one of the things that I oftentimes, again, will say to people is that people in Eastern Oregon, rural areas, we're living our dream where we want to be. We just have to make sure we can make enough money to stay here. And most people who live on the other side of the mountains, they oftentimes are trying to earn enough money, save enough money so they can leave. And so, I oftentimes talk about that. It's like the environment, it's most people here, they have a little garden, they're already growing, they're doing so many things that are very organic is a trendy word. But it's like, I grew up pulling a carrot out, rubbing it on my pants, feeding the top to the horse, and then eating the carrot myself. And now that's a lot of people's dream, and generations of people in Eastern Oregon have lived that dream. And so I say, be proud of what we have. I think that we are oftentimes in rural Oregon asked to be humble about it and maybe think that we have less than. I argue that we have more than, and we're just, now we can, with the ability to communicate, like on a Zoom meeting, things like this, all of a sudden, it's like we are in the urban area, and yet we still are all in our lovely homes in Eastern Oregon.
Yeah, well, and to that point, I think Kim, you had said this a couple of days ago, something about a misconception that rural folks are not hoping to kind of, how did you say that? Grow up and be. Yeah. What was your expression on that?
Oh, well, it's terrible. We always say we don't want to grow up and be Bend, and no, I was thinking. Well, because we're different. We want to go to Bend, but that's an example. I think of the urban rural. We want to go to Bend. We want to use Bend, but we
utilize.
And, that's what I meant by use the resources and utilize. But an example would be the community of Bend would not tolerate field burning. That's an example, right? Yeah. And it's like, we know we need it. And so it's something we're willing to live with and try to work with. The farmers do a great job of managing it to the best of their ability. And so it's like, we know that there are certain trade-offs to living in rural. And so, and then how do you push those when you can? And then, by pushing them, I mean, they've worked really hard to make sure that they manage the burn. How windy is it? How many crops are being burnt that day and similar, and at the same time, other choices to manage crops are maybe more damaging, antifungal stuff. So, but yes, so that I don't know which one you're talking about, Jamie. I just know that we think in our area, we're proud of who we are. We really like who we are. you know.
Yeah. Well, and just the quality of life, I really love it.
Absolutely.
I find it interesting. Sometimes sometimes I've been experiencing a perception that maybe there's less experience or worldliness. And this is not just an American thing. When I was working in Bosnia, I found the same thing. There was this kind of urban rural, and folks thought that folks in rural areas are a bit more simple, but it's, I challenge that, but that's sometimes a perception. But the other piece specific to the question is, this is partially why I'm doing these live streams. I mean, we have a really good network of folks throughout the state, including in the metro areas and in the Willamette Valley. And what I'm trying to do is not only highlight some candidates I really admire and would be amazing as county commissioner and in the House, but also to really bring attention to the ideas and the perspective and be able to talk about this stuff, because I think it helps to break down people's misconceptions when they hear people talk about our experiences and our love for our communities, but also how the challenges we face. Now we need to do things a little bit differently and work together to get things done. It's a different style. So Heidi asked, here's another $1 million question. Oh, great. Okay, here. Any ideas for how state and local governments can best help small businesses deal with the fallout of sheltering at home and social distancing from COVID-19? Let me just jump on this one first of all, and actually we're going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow during our noon Secretary of State segment. So we're going to talk about the small business aspect of the Secretary of State's role. And also on our website, Jamie for Oregon, we've got information and tips and links to not only physical health and mental health resources, but also information for small businesses, because right now, a lot of it's just getting the information out. And then how do we work together? And this is, I think the question is very well asked, because it's never just one or the other. There'll be a federal role, of course, there'll be a state role, and at the local level, the county and the city level, municipal level. And those partnerships are really key. So it goes back to that experience and trust and belief in partnerships, but also the identifying what the needs are in different regions and different places. I mean, you've both made this point about how each place is a little bit different. So having someone who understands the local issues and can help to make sure that two-way communication is happening around what the needs are and how we can best address the needs. But making sure that we're rebuilding our our business sector is critically important. I know this political stereotype, sometimes the Republicans talk about business and Democrats talk about social programs, but it doesn't, small business are our economic engine. It doesn't happen unless we build up our economic base. So sorry, I jumped on that one early. I don't, if you guys want to follow up on that. Again, it's how can state and local government help small business?
Yeah, absolutely. What we've seen in some of our Deschutes County businesses is that the PPP, a lot of people couldn't get access to the PPP, right? The grants, it's just not enough. Like we have a need for cash to get to our businesses right now for them to stay in the business that they're in. So if you are a small business, that program opened up again today. I would encourage you to apply today, absolutely. And I think we saw that the governor opened up the unemployment benefits to 1099ers and solos. So I think that will really help alleviate some pain that's happening. I would say on a very, very local level, if you can support local, that helps the cash flow.
Absolutely.
I'm probably not sounding like too much like a social programs Democrat, but as Central Oregon pragmatist, like we're talking about, but
that's right.
These businesses, they need money, and so the more that we can do to make that happen, the more the softer land it's going to be. It's going to be tough, but whatever you can do as a local citizen to support the businesses, that it would be
absolutely
great.
Let me just jump in on that, Kim, before we go to you. And specific to that, there's an organization that's starting out called SOS Bend.
Yes.
So
yes.
SOS, and what they're doing is the equivalent of gift cards, but for smaller businesses who either don't have gift cards or want kind of a central repository. You can, if you're in Central Oregon or you just want to support, you go to SOS Bend, and they're connecting with local businesses and providing some of those resources to support. It's kind of like buying a gift card, but for local businesses in the Bend area. Sorry, Kim, I jumped in on you. Other
No, and I'm
thoughts
hoping
that
that was my last move. It's like the sun was in the clouds when I set everything
Yes.
up, just slowly going like 10 feet away. So I think the number one thing is going to be collaboration, because you know what, surviving and coming out of this stronger, a strong economic recovery, it is not about whether or not you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's actually about, are you willing to work for everybody and work together? And that's what it's going to take. And actually, that's something I'm really proud, knowing both of you, that would happen. You know, and I really believe that. And so I think the shopping local is fantastic, Emma. I think that's the big deal. And I think that in our area, interesting enough, it's been our Chamber of Commerce, which again is a non-partisan type of thing. It's just business. They have everything set on one website. People can go there. Even the banks are looking at that. And so, but it's how do we get that information out to people? And that's where, again, in my how I would do things as county commissioner would be have more information. I would have stuff literally posted in the paper. I would have things, you know, jamming it on KWSO, you know, the radio station out on the reservation, so that the people of Warm Springs would be able to hear what might be available that they can have access to. Also, how do you get the information out to people? I think sometimes when we gain information as leaders, we forget how vital it is to share it, that we might be the only one that knows that. And so how do you bring as many people to the table? And that means, how do you bring in Jefferson County, that would be how many of the different groups, whether it be ethnic groups, it's different ages, you know, young people, the new business owners, not going to be able to weather this storm as well as somebody who's been in business 30 years. So we're going to have to all work together and not be greedy, but just work together.
Yeah. Well, and to the point of those resources, in terms of things the Secretary of State can do is provide linkages to, and you made a really key point, businesses at different stages in their business growth, there's different strengths and weaknesses, so making sure those resources are provided. So everything from startups and making sure that information is available in the community, and also information to the resources that are there to help folks small businesses who are struggling right now. So we're actually pushing time. We've gone longer than expected. I want to ask another question. It's not the total wrap up. Go ahead, Kim, jump in.
I just want to say, Jamie, the things that you're talking about and the way you would be Secretary of State would so serve Jefferson County. And thank you for that. Thank you for your ideas and your vision.
Thank you. That's kind of you. Thank you. There's a question about working together, but there's another question that came in that I just want to touch on real quick from Elizabeth. What are your thoughts on undocumented farm workers labeled as essential workers during COVID-19, but they aren't given federal aid? And this came in, and it's we've got a lot of other questions we're not getting to, but I just wanted to speak to this directly because it's near and dear to my heart. We've got folks who are paying taxes and who are not getting resources and who are expected to step up as essential workers because they're feeding us. So if you had dinner tonight, you were fed by someone who was, who works in a farm worker. And not being given federal aid, I think, is just unconscionable. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys want to touch on that, but I saw that as one of the questions, and I just had to speak to that. We need to, a basic level of fairness and human decency goes a long way. But again, we have folks who are feeding us and who are essentially in harm's way because of the need for them to be doing that work, and are, the president said something about cutting back the required amount that folks need to be paid. So being put in harm's way, having their salaries cut back, being taxed, and then also not being given assistance, I think is unconscionable. But let's wrap up the question. It seems there are a lot of great progressive candidates in Central Oregon. Thank you for noticing, whoever wrote this question. Do you work together to get each other elected? Well, I can say I'm doing my best because this is the second time we've got folks in Central Oregon, but I also know you guys do this as well. Kim, you've carried around some of my lawn signs, dropped them off, and when we met at that event, we were talking about it. What are some of the things so I think, do you work together? I think it's a simple yes, but what maybe are some of the ways that we can better work together? What are some of the ideas for folks who want to support other candidates progressive candidates in not just Central Oregon, but rural Oregon? We've got folks on the coast. We've got folks out in Eastern Oregon, folks in Southern Oregon, up along the Columbia Gorge, really great candidates who are running and who can bring that perspective, Em, that you were talking about, that pragmatic perspective to the table. let me say very clearly, pragmatic does not mean watering down our values.
Absolutely.
I'm just so adamant about that. It's a different style and approach. And actually, it's more impassioned with our values because it's actually getting them to successfully move forward. It's not watering them down or compromising or getting in a clash so nothing happens. It's being true to our values and then successfully implementing them, which I think is so important. But can you both share, you know, an idea on how can we better work together?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say in Central Oregon, or especially Deschutes County, our neighborhood leader program put on by John Davidson, it's powerful. And if you want to get involved at a local level, well, I think that is a great example of centralizing resources, right? So if you're a neighborhood leader and you go to 20 houses and it all flows to one place and we can track it, and it really gives us really great statistics. You can see from the school board races, the park races, how effective that was. And then if you look at our Democratic state slate and with the Deschutes Dems, we are in for each other. We are texting each other all the time. I think more now than ever, there's a true collaboration. And I guess I would just offer an invitation to come join us. You are so needed, you're so wanted. You probably have skills that are needed, and to join us in this movement to build that bridge and to get work done.
Also, we have to give a shout out to Ron Hahn in Jefferson County.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say
neighborhood leader. Yeah. What else, Kim? What else
if anyone in Jefferson County wants to be involved in the neighbor leader program, they can contact myself or Jamie, and we'll get you in touch with Ron Hahn. He's fantastic. So he's fantastic.
He's incredible. And then also, I have to actually get a shout out to Nicole Van Eikeren, who has worked with me on both my campaigns, but also she has worked on virtually every school board, so many local races. She's just such a really committed to doing this work and to electing progressive voices who care about community. So with that, let's wrap up. Let's start. Sorry.
I just want to shout out Nicole too. She's wonderful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Kim, let's start with you. And as a reminder again, that for you, the primary could well be essentially the general.
Absolutely.
So for folks who are interested, what's your website? How do people get in touch with you? How do
Number one way to get in touch with me would be to contact my email, Kim Schmith. It's KIMSCHMITH 2020@gmail.com, or call, but better off text me, 541-980-6371. And I just want to do a quick shout out of information, and that is, if you're looking to support the Latino workers, we also have the Latino Community Association is specifically doing funds for families of undocumented people. You have to actually be undocumented to receive support. And there's not that there's a lot of money out there, but people are being very generous. So contact them. The website, the application is all in Spanish, and get people there, or they can contact me and I'll kick them to that too. So.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, great resource in Central Oregon. Rice in Eastern Oregon, also another great organization doing some work for our farm workers. Thank you. Em, how do folks get in touch with you?
Yeah, go to our website, Emerson Votes. It's Emerson with one M, votes.com, and everything will be right there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And also, I just want to say, how important it is that, Kim brings this up, and how, and you as well, of the different conversations we have with different people in power about our undocumented workers, and how we can have these local, shop local, do these things on a local level, but how powerful we can be when we take these policies upstream and not just do the things locally that we can do with the power that we have, but to go upstream and to really make some powerful legislation that will have an even greater impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially for rural Democrats, because this is not just a theoretical thing. These are friends and neighbors. These are members of our community. It's personal. And lastly, for us, my website is jamieForOregon.com. It's JAMIEFOR Oregon.com. It's Jamie McLeod-Skinner for Oregon on social media, so Facebook and Twitter and all those good things. We've got these ongoing forums in part to bring attention to great candidates like Em and Kim. Again, thanks so much for joining me today. We've also Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon, we're doing small segments on the different aspects of the Secretary of State role, because so many people don't really appreciate how important this role. It's an executive management role that oversees many divisions, including elections, including audits. The corporations, the registration of businesses and state archives, transparency, all those really important aspects for helping to build a stronger and healthier democracy. And then also we've got Oregon Voices Roundtable. So voices that need to be heard that are not being heard, voices that are not at the table right now. We're trying to make sure we're engaging folks in a two-way conversation so that we're engaging communities and making sure we're better hearing each other across many divides, the urban-rural divide, the socioeconomic divide, the racial divide, many of those different divides. So please join us on those as well. And then to everyone, this is a challenging time right now. Let's help each other out to get through it. If we stick together as Oregonians do, we'll get through it okay. And then we'll rebuild afterwards. But thanks to you both for joining me. Thanks everyone for joining us here today. Take care.
Thank you.